There are some students who are confused about what kind of Arabic they should be learning. For the people who are wondering, whether they should be learning like Fusha or Ammiya, what is your kind of advice to them? Like, how should they be making that decision?
Yeah, I think that there's two things that students should really always keep in mind during their study of Arabic. So one is that for making and creating and delineating immediate, or I should say short-term and long-term goals, oftentimes it's really helpful to sit down, have kind of a moment of reflection and think about, well, what is the Arabic speaking person that I want to be 5 years from now, 7 years from now, 10 years from now? And actually imagine oneself in that circumstance. What am I doing with the language? What am I practically doing? Am I talking with somebody else? Am I writing an email? Am I writing a book? Am I reading, kind of a classical text? What exactly am I doing with the language? And the more specific I can get with that scenario, the better. If I can really identify a scenario in which I'm actually really using the language. You almost want to think about, you're gonna buy some sort of device, at a store. What exactly will you be doing with that device? Think about language in that same way as a tool. How will I be using that tool? Once we've kind of identified that, then we can reverse engineer and think about, all right, if that's my goal in the future, where exactly do I want to start now? What exactly do I want to do right now that's really going to lead me in the direction of going towards that, and being as effective as possible, and using my time as wisely as I can. So oftentimes, I think for many of us as students and those working in the field, we may think of things in the general sense that, well, I want to go into diplomacy, or I want to be a journalist, or I want to work with NGOs, or I want to go into the academy, for example. I want to be an academic and work with classical texts, or I'm studying Arabic, for example, for reasons of personal piety. They're general concepts, but we haven't actually sat down and thought about, even within that general category, what do I practically want to do with the language? So that, I think, would be the first step for many of us. And it's really helpful to actually sit down and really think about it. And if one is finding it difficult to think about themselves, to speak to somebody about it, sit down and have a conversation, and let that conversation be a moment where your ideas are coming forth. And you're really starting to think about what do you want to do with the language. That's probably the first thing. And the second thing, and this is going to require some balance, because it does, there's a bit of a tug of war between these 2 points. Because on this first point, there's an idea that there's a goal I have in the future. I want to reverse engineer, have a trajectory, and work towards that from now. And that really lines up. I'm sure many of us by now have heard of this idea of, mastery, and you have to have 10,000 hours to kind of master something. And it's always this idea that you have a goal in mind, and now you want to start practicing that. You want to engage in deliberate practice that'll take you towards that goal. That's one way of looking at how we get better at maybe a whole kind of range of things. But there's another way, and there's actually a book about it called Range by David Epstein, which I think is really useful for many of us who want to look into studying language, which is that oftentimes, when we really progress in anything, especially something like language, that we need to have a range of skills. And we oftentimes don't really realize what it is that we want to do when we first get into language study. When we first get into language study, we're oftentimes going to have to listen to those around us, our instructors, our fellow classmates. We're in year 1, somebody's in year 2. As far as we're concerned, the year 2 student is, just they've done everything, and we just kind of obey any of the advice that they have, because they seem to know so much more than we do. And so we may take on ideas and roles and concepts of what's the best way to go about studying Arabic, or what we actually want to do with the language, based on other people's experiences. But if we allow ourselves to actually have a range of experiences, to look into different registers of Arabic, to look into different contexts in which Arabic is used, to not really pigeonhole ourselves into the idea that I'm an MSA person, or I'm a dialect person, or I'm a classical Arabic person, and to limit ourselves there, but to allow ourselves to expand a little bit. One that really assists us in giving ourselves the opportunity to actually realize that there may be a whole range and a whole host of uses and goals and tools that from Arabic that we haven't ever thought of. And so we actually kind of expose ourselves to that. The second thing, and this is a little more subtle, but it's really important in the study of language, is that in these contexts, this idea of, you have, say, 10,000 hours towards mastery, and then you have people that are dabbling in different things on the other side. These dabblers, what they end up doing is they gain side skills. They gain these skills that are not necessarily, at this particular stage of the process, we can see their direct relevance to our future abilities, but they're incredibly important as we go further and further in our studies. And so that connects in your point about, students themselves making that decision as to, should I do MSA or should I do a dialect? You want to balance in the sense that knowing where you want to go in the future, because you have limited time, limited resources, you do need to kind of have goals, but you also want to give yourself the opportunity, both in terms of for expanding your horizons and realizing you may like things that you didn't know before, and also recognizing that your ability to actually do that, to have this type of range, will assist you in anything you do. Even if you want to be an MSA focused person in the future or a dialect focused person in the future, being able to move across that continuum, that spectrum of different registers of Arabic, will help you tremendously, especially as you go further and further in your study.
It's probably worth noting that your goal, what you decide your goal is for, let's say 5 years or 7 years from now, might not be the same. After 2 years, your goal might change as well.
Of course,
which I think is in my case. I think that was probably what happened. I think for me, in the beginning, I really just wanted to kind of I was set on just learning classical Arabic and understanding Arabic for the purpose of reading books and understanding Quran and the khutbahs and all that. And then further down the line, it became more about speaking to people and connecting with them. So I think it's important to kind of note that you shouldn't limit yourself to just one thing. And I guess you're right, to expand your horizons. That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.